we are going to run through the top draft targets for the Browns as they do not pick until pick number 74, barring any trades. But before we get through my list of 25 names to keep an eye on, make sure to subscribe as we are trying to grow this channel. If we get to 18,500 subs before the NFL draft gets started, who knows, the bosses here at Chat Sports might greenlight us to get more studio space and even go live for more of the draft. What's going on, Browns fans? Welcome into the Cleveland Browns Report by Chat Sports. Yours truly, Matthew Peterson here with my top 25 players for the Browns at their 5 biggest positions of need. So we're going to run through what I believe is their 5 biggest needs in order, in my opinion, and then 5 names at each spot. Now, it's a bit difficult to do a video like this because when you don't pick until 74 in the draft, you try and find a balance of, well, I don't think this guy is even going to be there at number 74, so I won't include him on my list. So if you're getting a little mad because you're thinking, why is so-and-so not on the list? Well, there's a decent chance I probably ruled them out as even a contender at 74. So with that being said, let's start with my biggest position of need for the Browns. It is defensive tackle. With all of the news surrounding Perrion Winfrey and Tommy Togiai and Jordan Elliott not being NFL caliber defensive tackles, I think it's pretty fair to say that the Browns need to add some depth to this spot here. So when we look at the Browns' third-round defensive tackle draft targets, here are 5 guys to keep an eye on. Now, Keeanu Benton is a bit of a reach here. Some think he could go in round 2, but I'm being optimistic and pushing him to round 3. Kobie Turner is flying up draft boards lately. I'll tell you more about him later on. Gervon Dexter from Florida, he is a nice 5 technique that could bump inside for obvious passing situations if you want to get an additional pass rusher on your defensive line. Adetomiwa from Northwestern, an athletic freak that has some upside, but his floor is pretty low. And then there's Jerrod Clark out of Coastal Carolina. He might be the best true run stopper of the bunch here. Now, the 3 biggest names, Benton, Turner, and Dexter. Here are their stats from last season. Keeanu Benton in Madison, Wisconsin was reliable, and for a long time, he's got probably the highest pass rush upside of the 3 players here, but he's maybe not as good as a run stopper as, say, Kobie Turner or Gervon Dexter. Now, Kobie Turner, I continue to get a bigger crush on as we get closer to the draft. If this is the selection, I'll be very happy with it. Great football IQ, great guy to add to the locker room, and right now with the direction the Browns' interior defensive line room is going after Perrion Winfrey's arrest, maybe it's good to bring in someone who double majored in music and math or whatever, and he's just a awesome freak of athletics and nature and whatnot, but also a great locker room personnel. And then there's Gervon Dexter from Florida, who is one of your bigger defensive tackles, who's a good run stopper. He's just not as athletic as the other 2 guys. If any of those 3 guys are there at pick 74, I will be excited about any of the 3 of them, honestly. It brings much-needed depth to the interior defensive line. You really can't go wrong with any of those 3 guys. I think Keeanu Benton might be my favorite of the 3, but Kobie Turner is not far behind. Now, the other 2 guys that I had on my radar, Adetomiwa, Adeboware. So a tough name, so get ready if he is drafted to try and practice and learn it. From Northwestern, he is one of those awesome physical traits. He's got all the tools that defensive line coaches look for. Just the productivity was not actually there in Evanston last season. Now, the entire Northwestern football team sucked, so maybe teams were able to just zero in on Tommy Adeboware more, and that kind of hindered his ability. And with Myles Garrett, he could do more opposite him. He's also got a problem of missing tackles. That's a concern for a 3rd-round draft pick, right? You can live with that in round 5 and trust your coaching staff to figure that out, but you would like to see a 3rd-round player be able to make all the tackles he is supposed to make. Then there's Jerrod Clark from Coastal Carolina. How many of you watched a ton of Coastal Carolina football last year? So he definitely flew under the radar a little bit. Outside of, say, Mozzie Smith, He is probably the next best true nose tackle run stopper. He doesn't have the pass rush upside that Mazi Smith has, which isn't crazy high to begin with anyway. But I think Jerrod Clark definitely brings a high motor type nose tackle to 1 to 2 to 3 technique interior defensive lineman, which, let's be honest, the Browns need. They've got pass rushing abilities between Okoronkwo and Myles Garrett, with Dalvin Tomlinson also being decent in the pass rush department. Clark could be your true nose tackle run-stopping DT. So comment down below which position you think the Browns should draft first at pick 74. It's kind of a trick question. I don't think they're going to pick at 74. I think they either move up 10 spots and get their number one guy and feel like they won the draft, or they move back 10 spots or 12 spots and try and pick up a future 2024 draft pick. So moving on to our next position of need, it's not edge rusher, in my opinion. I think it is linebacker, right? The Browns' 4 key linebackers, JOK, Taki, Anthony Walker, and I'll toss Jacob Phillips in there, all end of the year on injured reserve last season. They need to add some more depth at this position. So here are my round 3 linebacker draft targets. Jack Campbell and Drew Sanders and Trent Simpson, I know, are probably a stretch for round 3. But then again, everyone thought Nakobe Dean would go round 1 or early round 2 last year, and he fell to round 3. So if one of those 3 guys fall to you, that feels like a home run. Then you got Henley from Washington State and Overshown out of Texas. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the whole list. These are your top 5 linebackers, and after 5, it's a long fall. This is not a very deep linebacker class, so if the Browns highly prioritize finding a linebacker, they need to do it in day 2 of the draft, because the day 3 linebacker might not be as good. I mean, Henry To'oTo'o is not on the list there, and I like him, and so as I think about this, I'd probably include him as well. But after that, it's a long fall. So if the Browns want to target linebacker, they need to target this position early in the draft. Now, before we get on to the rest of today's show, today's Browns Reports is sponsored by ZBiotics. Let's face it, after you guys hit me with a bunch of super chats talking about you, Keith, I don't always bounce back well the next day. Now, that is until I found ZBiotics. ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Now, here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. ZBiotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. It's designed to work like your liver, but in your gut where you need it most. Drink ZBiotics before drinking alcohol and drink responsibly, and get a good night's sleep to feel your best tomorrow. Give ZBiotics a try for yourself. Go to zbiotics.com/chatsports to get 15% off your first order when you use code CHATSPORTS at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you are unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/chatsports and use the code CHATSPORTS at checkout for 15% off. Shout out to ZBiotics for sponsoring today's show. All that information's in the comments and the description of today's video. Now, to get back to the linebacker class here, Jack Campbell, Drew Sanders, and Trent Simpson, these are your top 3 linebackers for round 2 to 3. Now, Jack Campbell is likely not going to be there, but you can never quite rule it out. Now, as for Drew Sanders, he's sort of your diet Micah Parsons, like 14 tackles for loss and 9.5 sacks as an off-ball linebacker. He's got a shot as a outside linebacker in the NFL. Trent Simpson was awesome in 2021 when Brent Venables was his DC, like a lot of other Clemson Tigers. Last season, he regressed a little bit, but he's still a darn good inside linebackers. If any of these guys are there at pick 74, I will run in the draft card for Andrew Berry. It would be a win for any of these 3 players to be there. Jack Campbell is probably my number 1 guy because he was a Dick Butkus award-winning linebacker last season, the best in the country. Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. He's just a very well-rounded linebacker and one I can rely on for the Browns to have for years to come, which I can't really say about anyone in the current linebacker room for the Browns. That kind of includes JOK with 2 injury-plagued seasons to start his NFL career. Now, the NFL draft is going to kick off on Thursday evening, and we will be live for all 3 days of the NFL draft. So don't watch it with ESPN where they just bring up really sad stories about every single player for some odd reason year after year. Hang out with us here at Chat Sports. Yours truly will be live over on our main channel. So make sure to subscribe to Chat Sports for 3 days of wall-to-wall NFL draft coverage. Getting back to my biggest needs for Cleveland, at number 3, I'm going to go edge rusher now because I understand a lot of people could have that as even 1 or 2, but you got a guy named Myles Garrett. So, yes, I am all for finding a Robin for Myles Garrett, but you did make a priority free agent signing in Okoronkwo. You also drafted Alex Wright in the 3rd round last season, who was pretty much a non-factor, but maybe the Browns do have some belief that he can turn it on in year 2, so that's why I think edge rusher could be a little bit lower. It's also a super deep edge rusher class, so the guy you get in round 2 won't be that different than the guy you get in round 3 or 4. So here are my 3rd round edge targets for the Browns. I've got Derick Hall out of Auburn, Isaiah Foskey out of Notre Dame, and Zach Harrison from Ohio State. Tuli Tuipulotu from USC, and YaYa Diaby out of Louisville. Now, if I had to zero in on one of these 5 guys, what about Derick Hall, the Auburn Tiger? 6'3", 254 pounds, so a bit undersized for a true edge rusher. A 2-year starter for them, phenomenal speed, right? The speed and bend you look for, he's got it. Now, he has been mocked to go anywhere from late first, like Kansas City, to round out the draft, to early 3rd round. No one's got a good beat on where Hall is going to end up. He's an explosive pass rusher and an average run stopper. I think the run stopping is probably why he's not a surefire day 1 or early day 2 pick. Now, Hall last season for Auburn, 11.5 tackles for loss and 6.5 sacks, along with 2 forced fumbles. Like I said, he has that great burst off the snap to get into the backfield. Now, the other 4 edge rushers, Foskey, Harrison, Tuipulotu, and YaYa Diaby. Now, Isaiah Foskey and Zach Harrison were both pretty productive players for their respective schools, but Isaiah Foskey was really productive. Now, for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, he was a 2-year starter, 6'5", 264 pounds, so a bit bigger than Derick Hall. Now, his biggest knock is his bend, right? Meaning every single snap between an edge rusher and a tackle is a chess game, right? What is he going to do and how am I going to stop it? And it goes both ways. The issue with Foskey is he doesn't have that bend where if the tackle beats his initial plan of attack, he doesn't have that elusive bend to kind of dip down and get past him as a second effort. Now, he did have 22 sacks in his last 2 seasons over at Notre Dame, so he didn't have much of an issue with not being the bendiest guy to still put up numbers. We'll see how well that translates to the NFL when you're playing NFL starting tackles. Now, see that 7.283 cone drill? That is a very interesting metric that GMs use to evaluate edge rushers. 7.28 is a bit on the high side. GMs want to find between 7 to 7.1 for the 3-cone drill. That tells them how bendy they are and how quick and short movements they can be. Jose Ramirez might be a draft sleeper, and honestly, if you remember, my first mock draft months ago, I picked Jose Ramirez in round 7. I'd be delighted to see him in round 7. He ain't going to be there anymore. He could be as early as round 5 now. Now, he was one of the most productive players in college football last season at his respective position. 19.5 tackles for loss and 12 sacks. Pretty sure that led FBS for all players. Now, he also was at Eastern Michigan, right? Anytime you play at a school that has north, south, east, or west in it, it's probably not going to get a ton of attention. But Jose Ramirez in his 3-cone drill, remember 7.28 for Foskey? He was 6.98. So he's got that raw athletic ability, and he also has the production. he just didn't do at a big-name school. He bounced around a little bit, started off at Arizona State. He could be a hidden gem for some team in day 2 or day 3. Now, speaking of draft sleepers, who is your draft sleeper? Light up the comment section right now. Give me a name down below of someone that everyone else is overlooking and you think is going to be a hidden gem in days 2 and 3 of the draft. Moving on to my next position of need, I will go with wide receiver. I don't think the Browns are sold on their wide receiver room for the next 2 to 3 seasons, right? Amari Cooper very well could be here for just one more season. Elijah Moore, he's got 2 years left on his contract. Donovan Peoples-Jones needs an extension. They might look to add some more speed, thinking for the long term here. So some third-round wide receiver targets. Marvin Mims out of Oklahoma, Cedric Tillman from Tennessee, A.T. Perry out of Wake Forest, Rashee Rice from SMU, and Tank Dell out of Houston. Now, of these 5 guys, one interesting name to keep an eye on is Marvin Mims. So, a 2-year starter for Oklahoma, of course, the cousin of Denzel Mims. 5'11", 183 pounds. He is an absolute burner. He's got that elite speed. He can take the top off of a defense. In fact, he averaged over 20 yards per receptions for 2 straight seasons at Oklahoma. He is a big play ticking time bomb waiting to happen. Now, for the Sooners last year, 54 grabs, 1,000 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Remember, this was an Oklahoma team that Tex got down to like their 3rd string quarterback at one point when Dylan Gabriel went through concussion protocol. So to put up that type of productivity with a defensive-minded head coach and 3rd string quarterback, that's going to make some GMs look at you a little bit closer. Now, the other 4 guys we looked at earlier, Cedric Tillman, A.T. Perry, Rashee Rice, and Tank Dell. Cedric Tillman is a very interesting name. I understand that he only had 417 yards and 3 touchdowns. He suffered a high ankle sprain last year for the Vols, got mid-season ankle surgery to get back on the field sooner. Then there's A.T. Perry, Rashee Rice, and Tank Dell. Tillman, I understand I come with some bias because he does come from my alma mater, but Cedric Tillman last year, believe it or not, you ask enough people around Knoxville, was the best wide receiver on that team. That's a team that had the Biletnikoff winner, Jalen Hyatt, on it. So Cedric Tillman could be a big-time hidden, diamond in the rough, if you will. He's not a burner. He's not going to come in here and take the top off of defense, but he's a darn good receiver and one you could have for many, many seasons on your team, filling a different type of role. Now, A.T. Perry, he's a bit faster than Cedric Tillman. He was Sam Hartman's go-to guy for Wake Forest. Doesn't have elite speed, but he's got surefire hands, great route runner, 1,000 yards, and 11 touchdowns. There are a lot of GMs who have very high praises for A.T. Perry. Moving on to our 5th and final biggest need for the Brownies, I will go with offensive tackle. Might seem a bit strange because the Browns have 2 starting tackles right now. Jack Conklin did get signed to a 4-year extension. Look at it as a 2-year extension, though, because that's when all the guaranteed money is up. And then there's Jedrick Wills. I have no idea if the Browns are going to pick up his 5th-year option. I think it is largely dependent on how the NFL draft goes. If the Browns are looking in round 3 to pick up one of these offensive tackles, if Daiyan Jones is still there, or Blake Freeland, or Tyler Steen, if they have a short list of offensive tackles that, hey, this is our best player available pick, and if they're still there when the Browns are on the clock at 74, Cleveland might say, screw it, pick one of these players, have them sit for a season, and boom, they take over from Jed Wills at left tackle, and the Browns aren't paying $14.1 million in 2024 for their starting left tackle. Instead, they're paying about $1 to $2 million. Now, Blake Freeland is a really interesting candidate because I think he has a very good shot to be there in round 3, unlike Daiyan Jones. Now, he is 6'7", 302 pounds, loads of experience, 4-year starter for the Cougars out in Provo, 26 career starts at left tackle, 15 career starts at right tackle, finishes career at the left tackle spot. Usually teams, though, will put their best offensive lineman at left tackle. That might not always translate to the NFL, but teams in college will do what's best for them at the time. Now, he needs a lot of technique work done. He is a big mountain of a human being, but he needs to learn how to use his hands best. And I got good news. The Browns, they got this guy named Bill Callahan. He's the best offensive line coach in football. Could you imagine the cartwheels good old Bill will be doing in Berea if they give him a 6'7", 302-pound tackle to say, hey, work on him for a season. In 2024, he's our starting left tackle unless Jed Wills looks like some top 5 tackle we just can't move on from unless we all want to get fired. So my question is, are the Browns waiting on Jed Wills' 5th year because they want to see if their Martin Emerson of this draft class falls to them at 74 or falls close enough where they might trade up? So that could be a very interesting pick to keep an eye on. That's going to do it for us on today's show. If you made it this far in the video, like I said, make sure to spam FPIT down below in the comment section because clearly I think you're doing something right if you are enjoying our video to watch all the way through. Drop us a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And hey, if you want more Browns coverage, hit me up on Twitter at MatthewPD. I'm always tweeting about the Brownies over there. So that's my Twitter handle. It's in the comments and the description of today's video.